Now let us discuss unemployment, a subject which interests me very much. It is covered in section 6. Well, unemployment, or to be more precise, the massive unemployment of productive factors, has two causes. One cause is immediate or direct, and the other is mediate or indirect, though no less significant. In fact, it is even more so. The immediate or direct cause of unemployment or joblessness is always that labour markets are very rigid. In the market, a force driven by entrepreneurs' desire for profit leads to the setting of a market price for each good and service, and this price falls between what is known as the subjective valuations of the marginal pairs. If an artificial price higher than the market price is imposed by the coercive power of the state, at that higher price it is to entrepreneurs' advantage to produce much more, because in theory they are guaranteed sales at a very high price, and yet those who demand the good or want to buy it, the consumers, demand less at such a high price. When an artificial price is set higher than the one that would emerge in the spontaneous free market order, the problem of an unsold surplus immediately arises. That is, when an artificially high price is set. For example, imagine the price of potatoes is 10 euros a kilo. If some state authority says 20 euros a kilo, entrepreneurs will rush to produce potatoes. But at 20 euros a kilo, many consumers will stop demanding them. As a result, the market will be flooded with unsold potatoes. Apply the same economic reasoning, mutatis mutandis, to the services of the labour factor, that is, workers. If a price, called a wage, is set for the services of labour, and this price exceeds the one the market would set, then there will be many more people who wish to work than entrepreneurs who demand workers, and there will be very high unemployment. Therefore, the immediate cause of unemployment is that labour markets are not free. They are tremendously rigidified by a snarled mess of poorly named labour laws, which are simply a group of government commands that prevent economic agents from making the deals they believe are most beneficial to them in the sphere of the labour market. These laws establish a minimum wage higher than the wage the market would set, and they are especially harmful to the least productive. That is, the young people who for the first time are entering the labour market, and to marginalised minorities, women, immigrants, who are hit particularly hard by unemployment. Thus, it should not surprise us that nearly 50% of young Spanish people are unemployed, due to an entirely rigid labour market bequeathed to us by the Franco regime. This rigid market rests on a tangled mess of regulations that establish minimum wages and prevent the negotiation of terms of dismissal, should it become necessary to conclude a work relationship, etc. No democratic party, since the arrival of democracy, has dared to dismantle it. That is why Spain has traditionally had the highest level of unemployment of all the countries in its economic area. And I am not referring only to the legal task of establishing labour prices, that is, wages, which exceed market prices, but also to union pressure and coercion aimed at keeping wages artificially high, and to the entire snarled mess of employment legislation, which makes hiring a worker a much larger commitment nowadays than marrying someone. Ever since divorce became quick and easy, it has been much easier to get a divorce than to fire someone. And entrepreneurs take into account not only the extra economic costs stemming from the imposition of this whole tangle of labour market legislation, but also the economic costs stemming from all the suffering, all the problems arising from the judicialization of dismissal, and all the problems involved in labour relations in a workplace which has been artificially transformed into a trade union battlefield, in which it is impossible to work comfortably, etc. As a result, there are a vast number of unemployed people whenever the labour market is rigid and not free. That said, while the immediate or direct cause of unemployment is always labour market rigidity or inflexibility, there is a much more serious, if that is possible, mediate or indirect cause of unemployment, and that is precisely inflation, or to be more exact, the artificial process of credit expansion. For if a process of artificial credit expansion is instigated and lasts for a somewhat prolonged period of time, we already know, based on economic theory, that this leads to a widespread misallocation of millions of workers, who are assigned to investment projects that are unviable in the long term. And since the market is highly efficient, and it sooner or later uncovers these investment errors, What immediately happens when the 6 effects we have studied are triggered? Well, we discover that all those projects are unviable, that they were undertaken in error. But the problems already exist. The damage has already been done. Workers have already been sent to produce what should not have been produced, to build what should not have been built, etc. And now it is time for the hard, difficult, arduous chore of transferring on a massive scale those workers and scarce factors of production from where they are and should not be to where they should go, which is to radically different lines of production, profitable ones. And clearly, if 5 million workers must be transferred from one place to another, and the labour market is not very flexible, we can all see that these workers will remain unemployed for a very prolonged period of time. So, if we wish to combat unemployment, we must make 2 measures. First, we must avoid under all circumstances the initiation of processes that lead to widespread malinvestment, and thus to a misallocation of the labour factor. For inevitably, sooner or later, it will become obvious that a restructuring is necessary, and on the level of individuals, families and society, it is always painful. Perhaps I have moved to Vigo to participate in an entrepreneurial project, and I have taken my entire family with me. But now it turns out I am being laid off, because that project is unviable, and I have to go back to Murcia with only the clothes on my back. If I had known what was going to happen, I would never have made the erroneous decision to go. So, we must prevent and block credit expansion, the mediate cause of malinvestment, of the misallocation of the labour factor, and therefore, ultimately, of unemployment, which calls for a temporary process of reallocation or readjustment of productive factors. Second, once an error has been made, it is vital that labour markets be as flexible as possible, because then the reallocation of workers, though painful and requiring of sacrifice, will be much faster. It is like when someone pulls off a band-aid, little by little. Ouch! One hair, and another, and another. Don't be an idiot. What you have to do is pull it off all at once. Ah! It'll be so fast you won't feel a thing. If labour markets are flexible, the readjustment process is very fast. There is much less suffering, and the social cost is much lower. So, now you know the 2 causes of unemployment and what you must do to combat it.